Blue Purple Crocodile is pretty damn crazy. So let's go ahead and find out why. What's up, crew? Or if you're new to the channel, just Zay here. And today we're going to be talking about my Blue Purple Crocodile build. And it's going to be really interesting, and it's kind of like a stuff that's been coming on an up and coming rise here and there. And I think that my ideal build, like I said, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, is a great way to kind of go about it, but in no way, shape, or form am I ever going to tell you that my build is the end all say all, and that's how I believe with anybody's build is. So I will go ahead and tell you just the breakdown of what my build is, kind of some stuff you can switch out here and there, and just one or two kind of interesting things that you can do with the deck that makes this deck particularly fun. So by all means, if you find this video useful in any way, shape, or possible, then go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel to go ahead and stay in tune with more stuff that I put out, and go ahead and hit that notification bell so that you stay up to date when I do post more deck profiles, because I will be posting a lot more, especially with the Treasure Cup right around the corner. I want to go ahead and put out as much builds as I can for people to kind of get, an interesting way to go about it. And I like to go ahead and start off with the more, I want to say, rogue builds, stuff that people may or may not particularly be gunning for off rip, but I do think that it is highly capable and highly possible to always win with any deck that you build. So by all means, without further ado, let's go ahead and look into the profile. Okay guys, so getting into this Blue Purple Crocodile deck profile, I'm going to go ahead and show you my ideal build right now that I currently have at the moment, and some stuff that maybe can be switched out here and there. That way it can kind of give you an idea as far as to different routes you can go with this deck. So obviously, starting off, I'm going to go with the leader. The leader has the ability of, with one Dawn attached, and you activate an event, you may draw one card if you have 4 or less in your hand, and if you haven't drawn using this leader's effect during this turn. They added that last verbiage, that way you can't draw more than once with this leader's ability in a single turn, so that's just to be kept in mind for sure. But starting off, I'm going to go ahead and start with characters. So obviously doing 4 of just plain law, nothing too crazy, it's something simple, and I think it's just a staple right now in any blue variant at all, just because it's just an easy blocker to play out turn 1 and to kind of protect yourself in the first swing when it comes, because it will come eventually, especially with you having 4 life and most of your opponents having 5 life. It's just something that's just going to be easy and a given. So yeah, there's 4 of that for sure. Now, my different take on this deck is that I'm actually playing 2 Mr. 3. This one has the ability of, on play, if your leader is a Baroque Works type, which obviously Crocodile is, you select one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 4 or less, and that selected character cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. Why do I think this is very good? I think this is heavily good against Zoro matchups, because when they drop that 3-cost Zoro and they want to go ahead and swing with it, and you protect it the first time, now you're kind of worrying about, okay, how am I going to get rid of it next turn? But if you play him, then you don't have to worry about it for a whole nother turn. So I think this is really, really good against those matchups. It's good against green Okikus. If they try to rest some of your characters, you can just play this, and then that character just no longer matters to you. It may also be good against like Jax and the 2-cost Luffy that can give itself Recycled Dawn, which is very powerful. It stops a lot of those pesky cards that are at that low 4 or less cost. So that's my take on as to why I play Mr. 3, but I do put him at 2 because in more cases than not, I think it's just better to have at 2, but this is a good card that can be switched out for sure. Next, 2 Miss Double Fingers. She's just a really good 3-cost for 4k, and honestly, it's one of those cards where if your opponent wants to KO it, that's cool because you just more benefit off of it. If you're going against purple matchups like Kaido when they drop that 10 drop, then obviously this is just good as well, because at least you get some type of benefit off of it. I do run on that too, because outside of that, it's like really, really rough. And it is also another searchable target off of another card that we run in here. So it's okay, but it also can be switched out for sure. The main staple in this card is going to be Miss All Sunday. She's definitely a 4 of. She's a blocker, and on KO, if your leader is a Baroque Works type, which obviously yours is, then you add an event from your trash to your hand. Now, the key word in this card in particular is that it adds a event, not a blue event, not a Baroque's event, but just an event in general. So with that, you can use any event essentially in this deck that obviously is blue or purple, and you get to recycle it off of her ability. So I think this is just a definite keep, and it's obviously good, especially against Like if you're going against, again, a Zoro matchup and you happen to run into a Nico Robin that wants to just get rid of this, then you still benefit off of it even if you don't get the block, because you get to now recycle an event. So it's something that when on the board, it is very respected in a way. A lot of cases, I think the only matchup that it wouldn't really see as much usefulness in is if you're going against a blue type, and then that means they have to spend their resources to return your pesky blocker because they don't want you to gain an event. But it still works for you because now they spent their resources on something else rather than going for your life kind of thing. So I think that definitely helps as well. Now, as far as 2K counters, one of them is going to be Mr. 2, Bond, which is just a given. Yeah, you can use his ability of when attacking, look at the top 5 for Bulwark's type event card and add it to your hand. However, there's not that many of them right now, especially in OPO1, for this to be very usable. So it's just better to use it as a 2K counter. But if you haven't seen any of them so far in the game state, then by all means I would say play them, because it helps to, you know, recycle through a lot of your stuff. And with this deck, you're going to go through a lot of your cards heavily. So it's definitely good as a 2K counter, and it's good as a searcher. Now going into a bit of the purple, I run 3 Jack because he's very good in the early game, but outside of that, he's very situational in my opinion. When attacking, return a Dawn and your opponent trashes a card from hand. So the reason why I don't particularly like to use his effect early on, unless I know I'm having an opponent, like for example with the Zoro that we're going to be seeing a lot of, or a Kid, it's better to kind of get rid of some of those cards in their hand, because it may be, you know, their 8-cost Kid or their Searcher Bonnie, or, you know, their counters in hand, whatever the case may be. I think it's very good for that. What I don't like to have happen is use this if I'm on the curve, meaning if I start at turn 1 and my second turn I'm on turn 3, third turn I'm on, you know, turn 5 Dawn kind of thing. I don't like use it then, because then it puts me under. But if I'm going second, then I would use this, because with him, then, you know, it gets me on the curve. And a lot of these cards, I don't know if you've noticed, are 1 cost, 3 cost, as you'll see in just a moment, 5 cost, 7. So I kind of want to be on that odd kind of thing and not necessarily evens. So that's exactly why I run him at 3 and not necessarily a 4 of. Now going into a little bit of extra spice, I like to run 2 of Kamazo, and he's really good because on KO, when you return a Dawn, you KO a 5 or less on your opponent's board. So it's one of those cards where, especially right now in the early game state of OPO1, this is really, really good, because a lot of people now have to make a decision if they want to risk something on their board. A card like this is very, very, very hard to get around for example, Zoro players, because majority of their cards is 5 or less, unless they're playing Shanks, then that's a different story. But I mean, they're 5 cost Luffy, there's Zoro. If you're going against Law, the same thing, 5 cost Luffy, Zoro. If you're going against Kaido, they're Queens. Their blockers, all of them right now are 5 or less. So it's kind of like stuff like that is very, makes this card shine a little bit. Yes, it is a 4 cost for 5k, but you are going to benefit, and it will stay on your board a lot longer than you may think. My case personally, I've played a lot of matchups where this stays on board once he's played, because people just don't want to sacrifice a card on their field. So I mean, with that, I think this is really, really good, and I run it at 2 only because I like to fill the other slots with more stuff that helps this deck. But you could definitely switch out, for example, if you don't like the Mr. 2, you can definitely switch him out and make him 4. So that's my opinion. Now going into some more 2K counters, we have X-Drake. He has the on play of Return to Dawn. Your opponent trashes 1 card from your hand. I mean, 5 costs for 5k is not necessarily good. If you really feel like you pushing for game, you can play this. But outside of this, he's really just a 2K counter in my opinion. Going into another, we have Queen. Yes, Queen is going to be that 5 cost 6k blocker, but also has the ability, and this is necessarily in this deck is going to make this card shine, is it has the ability of returning a Dawn, you draw 2 cards and trash 1 from your hand. So if you have a lot of, like, let's say for example, you have a lot of cards in your hand that aren't really doing good in this situation, let's say you have that Mr. 2, then, you know, you can draw 2 cards, trash whatever card that you feel like in this matchup you don't need. And it helps you, especially in this deck, because you're going to be drawing quite a bit using Croc's ability. At least in my case, I definitely have. So that's really, really good. Now, I run 2 of the 6 cost king and 2 of the 7 cost king. Now, I run 2 of each because of particular matchups. I'm seeing a lot more law players, especially with more wins recently. So I think that this king detrimentally kills law, especially with a lot of their board filling is going to be 3 or less costing. So this is KOing 2 off rip. That's really, really good. And this is more so for the Doflamingo matchups where they're playing a lot of 4 cost less. So I mean, honestly, depending on what matchup you feel like you're running more into, you can obviously switch out one for the other and go 4-4 of for sure. For me particularly right now, I'm doing 2 and 2 just because of, you know, what I've been running into a lot recently. And now finally, for the last character, I am running 4 Crocodile. I think he's a must-have in this deck for sure. He does, for one, have Banish, and he does have a counter for being 7 cost, which is a lot. But the main ability that he's going to be really, really helping out a lot in is the fact that if you attach a Don to him, he gives all of your blue events in your hand a -1 cost. So why do I think this is really, really good? Is because you're basically getting events for free, particularly. A lot of ones that you're going to be getting into is going to be like, for example, your Borg Works, your Desert Spada, your Love Mellow will be at 1. If you run Overheat, it would be at 1. So that really, really helps. And I'll get into more so why that helps when we get into combos. But for now, I do run 4 of him. And if you want to, I've seen some people necessarily not like the 4 of him and they want to go for more of a return strategy on the side. You can switch out 2 of those for 2 Mihawks, or really you can switch out any of these cards that you want for 2 Mihawks. I think it's going to be really, really good to return a lot to the bottom of the owner's deck. I think it's very detrimental. And for it being a 9 cost 9k, when you're going against a kid matchup and they drop that 8 cost kid, it'll be something that can definitely get rid of it. Or if you want to, you can play the vanilla Vito, which is a low costing card that has a very closer curve to get rid of that 8 cost kid for sure. Now going into events, I do run 2 Bulwark Works. If you don't know Bulwark Works ability, look at the top 5, reveal up to 1 Bulwark other than this card itself, add it to your hand and place the rest at the bottom. So I mean, you really want to run 2 because you have about a 1 in 5 chance. There's 20 cards in total, but not including these 2, you're at 18. I think it's something that it will help you. And I mean, if you, for example, have Croc with a down attached, it's just a free card. Or if you feel like you haven't seen any of your Borg, then I think this is really, really a helpful card to probably search out with the Miss All Sunday. But it is really just a 2 of. I don't think you need any 4 of until you get into set 2. Now going into a really, really nice card that I like, especially for this deck, is Desert Spada. It is a 2k counter essentially, but you also get the benefit of looking at the top 3 of your deck and place the rest at the bottom of your deck. And it also has the trigger where you can draw 2 to trash 1 from hand. So I think, for example, if you have a lot of like no counters in hand, then I mean obviously you can just recycle some of those out that you know you can benefit and gain. If it's event that you trashed, then you can gain a lot with this, because if you have that Miss All Sunday on the field, you use this, then you know you basically drew 2 cards for nothing kind of thing, or drew 2 for free, I guess is the better way to say it. So there's a 4 of that for sure. 4 of Blast Breath, that's also just a given, because I mean it's a 1 costing, or essentially it's 2 because they're returning a Dawn for 4k. That's just a given, I think, for sure. Obviously a 4 of Love Mellow. This is just any blue staple right now, and the biggest thing with that is paying 2 to get 4k and draw a card if you have 3 or less in your hand. But with Crocodile, if you have 3 or less in your hand, you're really drawing 2 cards if you use this event. So I think that's a big plus, a lot. And then unpopular opinion, but 2 Overheat, which I think honestly myself I might switch out for sure. I might switch Overheat out for those 2 Mihawks, or I might switch it out for like a 3rd King, whichever one I feel like. You know, this one is kind of in the air as far as what I want to do with this Overheat. But Overheat is a 2 costing 4k that you get to also return an active 3 or less to the opponent's hand. In this case, you can do quite a bit with it. Like if you feel as though you want your Miss All Sunday back in your hand for whatever reason. Or a nice little saucy combo that you can do is use this with Mr. 3, because then with that, you can return him back to your hand and then stall your Zoro player out again. That's just an example. But, it's been doing me a little bit of spice here and there, but nothing too crazy. So going into a real quick combo that I think is really beneficial in this. Let's say, for example, if you happen to have a Dawn attached to your Crocodile, then what you could do is also obviously attach a Dawn to your Crocodile. And really good thing that people haven't realized in this case, which I, for example, run the 2 Baroque works, is because if I really need an extra draw in hand, even if I whiff off of this won't matter because of this. Let's say, for example, I have a Dawn attached to Crocodile. Let's say I have less than 3 cards in hand. Doesn't really matter what it is. This doesn't specify during your opponent's turn. So what you can do is you can activate for free, because Crocodile will make this a free card, to search the top 5. Let's say you pulled a, Miss All Sunday. That's cool. I still have less than 4 cards in hand. So because of that, I get to draw another card from the top of my deck because of his ability of having 4 or less in hand, and I activated an event. So that's one thing that you can do, and I think that's really cool, and a lot of people may not realize. Because even if I don't draw off of the Baroque works, then it doesn't matter because I still get 1 from Crocodile for sure. So I had the opportunity to get 2, but even if I don't, I'm still getting 1 for a cost of really no Dawn at all. So that's one combo. So one quick combo that you can do, because a lot of people forget to realize, is that you can actually chain events. And in this deck, this hack helps you quite a bit. So let's say, 3rd card doesn't really matter, but let's say you happen to have Desert Spada and Love Mellow in your hand, or let's just say you have Desert Spada in your hand alone. What you can do is, if you happen to have 4 or less cards in hand, and you pay your Dawn to activate Desert Spada, you're going to go ahead and draw your 2K, cool, that's cool, but then you get to look at the top 3. Now, the good thing about this is you get to rearrange it in any order that you want. So let's say you really need a Jack, then boom, your draw off of activating an event with less than 4 cards in hand is going to give you a draw off Crocodile, and you know what it is because you stacked your deck. So let's say you need a Jack, boom, you put that at the top. Or let's say you need a 2K, boom. Or let's say you have, no 7 cost Croc and you want some free blue events, boom, put them on top of your deck. Then, because of Croc's ability, you have less than 4 in hand. You get to draw, oh wow, a Croc, It's really cool. Now, another thing that you could do is, let's say, for example, you happen to really need to get, 6K on your leader to go ahead and avoid, let's say, a Shanks. What you're going to go ahead and do is, boom, chain this first, because on resolve, the Desert Spada will have to resolve first. So pay your 1 Dawn to play the Desert Spada, and then play your 2 Dawn for this. In the order of response, Desert Spada has to respond first. So you'll get that 1, 2, 3. All right, I know what the top 3 are, and this is where it gets really nutty. Let's say you want to put the 2K counter and you want to go ahead and put a Law. Bam. Because of Love Mellow, I draw the card off of that. Because of Crocodile, I draw the next card off top of that, because I had originally 2 cards in hand, or less than 4. And this is a really good saucy combo. Because of that, you're drawing 2 for the price of 1. Let's say I didn't even need to do Love Mellow, or in just the order of attacks, this wasn't even a chain, and let's say that this was, they swung for 6. Boom, Desert Spada, cool. I drew off a Crocodile. Then I do Love Mellow. I already know what the next card is because of my Desert Spada. So this is why I run a 4 of this, is because this really helps as far as the draw power and knowing what I'm going to draw. It helps me think ahead of what is going to be drawn, and it's really saucy for this deck for sure. So that concludes my deck profile for Blue Purple Crocodile. Do let me know down in the comments what your ideal differences would be in your deck build, or if you feel like my build is just completely spot on. And honestly, I would tell you right now, I don't even think my thing is completely spot on. I always like to tweak, and I always like to hear the feedback from y'all to see what could be done differently, or just stuff that maybe I didn't see. So by all means, do let me know down in the comment section what you think is stuff that you would like to do different, because I just love to go back and forth with y'all and kind of talk and get our minds going in regards to stuff that is possible with just deck builds in general. And I will be putting a lot more of those out, like I stated earlier, so do stay on the lookout for those and hit that notification bell to stay up to date when I do post those. But with all that said, do stay blessed, know that the One Piece is real, know that you got love over here. Peace.